Welcome to another exciting, amazing episode of the EPIC podcast. EPIC stands for Elite Professionals in Coaching. I'm the host today. My name is Chris Aird, and I am not only the owner of With Purpose, but I'm also the chief business strategist and consultant for the company. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about a topic that most people, or at least the people that I've heard on podcasts and in different types of mastermind groups or something of that nature, not talk about a lot. And part of it is because it's really difficult to explain it, but the word is processes. And if you've been listening to this podcast or you know me for any length of time, you know that any business is built upon three different pillars, people, processes, and profit. And so today, and probably over the next few podcasts, we're going to be talking a little bit about the processes of it, if you will. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult to talk about it is because it varies from business to business. It varies from person to person. But let me ask you just a couple quick questions, just to kind of put this idea in your mind, and making sure that the processes that you have, not only for your own personal life, but for the business that you are either owning or that you're in the middle of, or if you're a community leader and you're in the middle of something, there's always processes. It's absolutely essential. So here's a couple of questions. Have you ever had to listen to yourself repeating the same instructions or directions time after time after time to coworkers? Are you struggling to remember how to complete a task that you tackled a month ago? How about remembering feeling frustrated by the time and the effort that was wasted? See, these are just some simple questions that when I'm in front of people and I'm sharing this with you, that really kind of gets to the root, the heart of what's going on, and identifying whether the processes need to change. Now, let me just share a quick story. When I first started my consultancy business, I had a client that had been around for couple decades, and they were really struggling keeping their business afloat. And really, it was a couple of factors. They were struggling with the profit, of course, but it resulted from a couple of factors. One, the owner and the people. And two was the processes that they were using today, whereas if it was still 2 decades ago. And things have changed. The world has changed. The way in which we see things have changed. And so starting working with the owner, and then we started to change the processes. We started to really dive deep into the business and making sure that what they were wanting to do, the results that they had, that the steps to get there were going to be attractive, that they were going to be realistic, that there was a little bit of a stretch goal to make sure that they could get where they wanted to be and needed to be. And we put all that together, and within less than a year's time, we had come together with a multi-million-dollar contract for them overseas. It was absolutely amazing. It was the greatest thing that I could have ever been a part of. And I do this month after month, day after day with clients, helping them put some practicality in action. So those questions that I asked you, it does not have to be this way. You don't have to tell coworkers or your employees or other people in your life over and over and over again the things that have to be done or the steps that make sure it gets done. We can put processes in place. We have to create habits. We have to make sure that you do have the right people as well. But at the same time, we need to make an opportunity for people to understand, to be able to maybe read something, to have hands-on approach, to recognize how they learn. All of that comes into play with this. So picture this for a moment. Let's say that you need Bob to take over some of your tasks because you're moving on to another project, and it's simple to you because you've done it. Maybe you even created the job, you created a portion of that's going on, and because you're going to go delegate to him so that you can move on to a different project, you need him to do all of this stuff. And so you've figured it out. You've put a lot of the moving parts together, and there's potentially some margin for error, but because you know those tasks at hand, you know what needs to be done. It might even be some email templates that you've put together that you've been using, and you know how to respond to that particular person versus responding to this particular person. So there's a lot going on here. You explain the idea to Bob before literally handing over the project to this person. And we've all been there. I've said it, I've heard it said, and we ultimately say to people as we are walking away from delegating something to them, we say what? Let me know if you have any questions. We've all been there. And honestly, how many of us really ask those questions? More often than not, most people don't. They try to figure it out themselves. They don't want to come across as being lesser than, or maybe that they didn't understand it, even though maybe someone didn't explain it well enough, right? So there's so many different variables. But ultimately, the last statement as we walk away is, let me know if you have any questions. Have you been there? I know I have. I know I've said it as well. So what happens though is maybe in a week, a month, you recognize that everything has kind of just imploded. It's a mess. Consistency of the work is all over the place. There's no commitment. There's no content that's accurate, or at least the way that you used to do it. And you think, as people are signing off on this, how is it making it through our approval process, right? Well, the catch is for me, for you doing the project, the task was simple. The task was, we created it. So it was based upon what we knew at the time and how we adjusted throughout the time of that project. The catch is it didn't happen for that way for Bob. We have to go back and we have to come back to the idea that we created it. We need to be patient with Bob. We need to give him and or her in this situation something that is tangible so that we really just don't walk away. Ultimately, it's about creating a process that everybody, wherever you're at, can follow, can stick with, can commit to, can communicate, and then connect with. For me, it's a simple task, right? I know what I want in my head. I've heard that many times. I know what I want in my head. The idea is trying to explain that to somebody, either verbally or written down, or try to explain them with a hands-on approach. A business, the success of a business or a business success lives and dies by the quality of processes. Lives and dies by the quality of processes. I'll go back to one of my clients that I had worked with as soon as I started the consultancy. And that was that company that had been around for a couple of decades. The moment that we had I got them to identify that the processes were broken, not that they were wrong, they just needed to be tweaked. They needed to be developed for a time such as this, right? Not 20 years ago, not 30 years ago, today. And then getting them to think a few years down the road on what the process might look like as they're bringing more people on, as they're switching to a different client or keeping this current client and bringing someone on. The processes are always changing. We know this to be true, and yet sometimes we don't think that way. So I'll give you a personal story. Years ago, I had the honor and the pleasure to serve in the United States Navy. And I did payroll. I did accounting for the Navy. Loved it, enjoyed it. There was a lot of broken processes just because there's turnover, and not turnover is the way in which you think of a typical 9-to-5 job. But if the process isn't challenged, then people become comfortable with what is and don't think outside of the box, right? So for however I did it, I don't even remember how I did it. I do remember a couple of specific things though, and I'll share that with you here in a moment. I decided that there was other things that I wanted to do on board the ship, like being on the firefighting team, being on the security force team, landing helicopters. And all of this was to help not only be a better service to the people on board through my accounting services, through my bookkeeping services, the payroll services, but to also develop me as an individual and therefore be of a better sailor, enlisted person to not only the people on board the ship, but ultimately in the community. There was just something that I knew I needed to do in this. So here's this very specific situation. So we had, back in the day, there was these big, huge accounting books that we actually literally had to open up this book. It was across the pages. It was lengthy, not only in width wise, but in length. And we had counted for everything down to the penny. Now, that's my mindset. That's my personality. I like to be meticulous. I like to think things through before I commit to something because I don't like to disappoint people, right? So with that being said, I thought for a brief moment, okay, I've got to get this job done, this particular job done in a week. I'm left-handed. So I don't want to just stop writing to use the 10 key calculator. So what I did, being left-handed, was I taught myself how to use the 10 key with my right hand. So it got to a point probably within, probably 3-4 weeks of always doing it. I was literally writing out in the ledger all the numbers while I was doing the 10 key at the same time. It was a process that I created. Now, that was something that I couldn't have asked someone else to do, but it was something I certainly shared with people and said to them, if you can learn this, you'll cut some of your time down in this process. Not only was it more strategic, but it was effective and it was efficient, right? My time matters as well as everybody else's time. And so even in this, I was able to write, taught myself how to do this. And when I started to do this, I recognized other things that I could tweak the process on. And within a year's time, I had literally taken the typical 8 to 5 job, right? Although in the military it's 24/7, but the amount of hours that I spend in the office, and I drilled it all the way down to about 4 hours. At that moment in time, I was then able to go and be of service or learn about all of the different things of the Navy on the ship there. This was very much an eye-opener to me, and I've taken the same principle, the same practical application in my own business, and I bring it to everybody else. I think about where their business is going to be in the couple, 3-5 years from now, and I help them get to that point starting today on what processes will help them get there, what need to be tweaked, what need to be removed, what needs to be added. And then together in a partnership, we're creating those things. You can do the same thing. You have to be intentional about it. You have to recognize that you might need to learn something new, but you also have to figure out what's going to drive you. For me, it was the driver was I wanted to do other things than just being in an office. So for you, it might be that you're okay with the comfortability that you're in. And I'm good with that. The concern will be, the challenge will be, is if there's other people around you, they may not be comfortable with where you're at or the business. You catching my drift on this? So you need to be able to make sure that what your business or what you are doing as a leader is meeting the needs of most people, if not all, under your leadership in one way, shape, or form, or giving them the opportunity to go ahead and make the change when it comes to the processes. Make sense? So not only did I save time, but I became efficient in what I was doing for the U.S. Navy. So it's all about processes. It's you can see it as formal processes or informal. Some companies have procedures. Some people have a manual. Some people are looking at various different things within their business. So you can have your business that is including all of these different facets, and each facet or each person has a process for each thing that has to happen. Think about when vehicles are going through the assembly line. There is a process for every single part of every single person that is a part of that assembly line. And then when they come off the assembly line, they go to the dealership, there's a process for that. When you purchase the car, there is a process for that. Right? And it doesn't mean that you have to be okay with it. It's just something that you are setting in place, in motion, that everybody that's associated to you and or your business recognize that as long as that process is active, everybody in some way, shape, or form should be following suit to what you're doing, because it then moves the company as a whole forward instead of going backwards. Back to my original analogy with the client. They were going backwards because they weren't going forwards. They were thinking about what had been taking place 2-3 decades ago instead of fixing or focusing on what needed to be done today. There's an importance to this on processes. And I usually say that the processes need to be 3 things. One is strategic. They need to be strategic. They need to be moving you forward. They need to be effective, right? And they need to be efficient. And all three of those things are for your consumer. They are for the growth of your company. They're for the growth of you, your staff, and your community. Strategic, effective, and efficient in your processes. It's important. You know, it's important because if there's not a structure, and I don't mean a rigid structure, but if there's not something for people to follow and you just happen to know all the information and nobody else is tuned into that information, then people are going to get frustrated. They're going to make up things in order to get the job done. And it may not be the way that things are supposed to be done, right? Because they're making up, because they don't have all the knowledge. At the same time, I would say this is if we leave them to that task, to that process, and we say, let me know if you have any questions, we can't just rely on them to come and make sure that if they have a question that they're going to come to us. We need to do a little bit of the movement moving forward as well. Probably should be checking up on them, making sure that there are certain little steps or major steps that allow them to understand that that particular portion of that process has been completed. You know, if there's no processes either, we're losing money. The costs can increase. We might be wasting resources. We're wasting certainly time. And all of a sudden, we recognize that we've got a lot of great stuff happening down here. And as we're moving forward or as we're moving up, it's kind of like a traffic jam and we get bottled up. And then all of a sudden we're just getting a little bit out and we're wondering what took place and why. Well, we can go all the way back to the beginning of your processes and make sure that things are exactly the way that you would like them. If there's some opportunity for freedom or for autonomy, that's great. We're good there. But we want to make sure that we're taking a look at those processes, tweaking them, identifying what needs to be changed, identifying what needs to be removed, what is no longer applicable or has not worked in the past, and then maybe adding some other new things. When we think about the importance of this, it's really an opportunity for us to kind of do a map, if you will. We know that when we're going to travel, we don't use the full out maps anymore. We get onto Google or an app that is a map on our phones, and we do it that way. And we can get directions that way. There was a time where when I was growing up as a kid, you learned the maps, right? You had a big atlas or you had this really cool, colorful book that was quite big, and it was on a spiral binder, and you would open up to the state that you're either in or going to, and you would map out your destination and how to get there. The same thing, friends, I'm telling you, I promise you, the same thing happens in your business and with your business. You have to map it out. It's essential to do that. I get it. We get into business for various different reasons, and we just know that we want to do this. Somewhere down the road, if we don't have it mapped out and you're getting larger and you're adding more and more people, you're not going to have the time to explain to every single person every single detail. Where if you were to take the time to not just work in your business, but work on it and start mapping out the process, you give people direction on steps to follow. Now, we don't want to cut corners either, right? Because that negativity comes back to us once people find out that we've cut corners. So we need to practice this with integrity. We need to practice this with honesty and with character, good character, great character. And we want to make sure that any opportunity for some negative responses or reactions are removed. So we want to keep everybody on the straight and narrow. So we want to map out these processes. And then I would say we need to analyze the process. We need to put some, you've heard this term, KPIs, key performance indicators, right? We need to put those in place so that we identify those benchmarks. Step A leads to step B. Once you hit step B, you go on to step C, or maybe you're doing A through C or A through G simultaneously that gets you to step H. All that to say is we need to analyze the process. Find out where the team members or employees or coworkers are getting frustrated. Get in there with them. Please get in there with them, or someone that you know, like, and trust is going to get in there with them and really kind of unwind that ball of yarn. It's really, really essential. Ask questions. At this point, why are the costs going up, or why are they going down? Why is the quality going up? Why is the quality going down? It's really important to kind of unravel some of that when we're looking at analyzing the process. And then I'll just finish it up with this. This is the third one. You might have to redesign the process. Doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. It does mean, though, that once you're in the middle of it and you start tweaking things, maybe you move this little thread over here, or you move this thread over here. It's really, really important that you have in your mind's eye the vision for the company along with the mission, and that you have foresight to make sure that you understand where you want that company to be. And then you've got to go backwards and you got to start saying and thinking and then implementing what are the processes that are going to get us there. Does this make sense? I really, really hope so. I'm going to go back to both of the stories that I told you. The first one with the client, picked up a multi-million-dollar project within a year. Part of it was because we were working with the owner. The other part of it was because we were working with the processes. And the processes showed their particular industry that they were ready to take on a big thing. And by the way, when we had those processes in place, we didn't need to change them for quite a while because we had already thought 3 or 5 steps ahead. To the personal story, I was able to go ahead after removing some hours off of my time clock, if you will, in the office. I was able to get the attention of my commanding officer and those people that were in supervisory motions over me. And I was able to land helicopters, and I was able to be on the security force team, and I was able to be on the firefighting team. I was able to do a lot of stuff that not only I was able to receive letters of commendation and all that, but then they said, what about going to officer candidate school? What else can we do? Because we know that you bring value to what it is that you're doing, and we get to benefit from this. So all this to say, please, please, please focus on your people, focus on your business, focus on your processes, figure out what needs to be tweaked. And if you don't have the time, help bring somebody in. For goodness sake, this is your business and you're providing a service to the community. But it's really important to have great processes that work for today, and then you'll be able to tweak them for the days and the months and the years to come. All right? As always, if you've got questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to answer them. Reach out to me on a phone, email, text, even here in social media if you're on that. But again, my name is Chris. It's been a pleasure to host you today on our podcast called E.P.I.C, Elite Professionals in Coaching. I hope you have a blessed and an amazing day and live with purpose.